Welcome everyone. This training is specifically designed for new volunteers and volunteers who have not attended Max training. By the end of this training, our volunteers will be able to articulate why we teach Max in AXF. Our volunteers will be able to describe CRA method of teaching Max. Our volunteers will be able to articulate the importance of objectives and planning an objective. The volunteers will be able to use a student book and a teacher book. The volunteer will be able to plan a math lesson in I do, we do, you do format. The volunteer will be able to use vocabulary as a foundation to teach Max concept. So in AXF, why we teach Max is a major question, and it's also kind of our goals. Where do we want to achieve? In AXF, we have two simple goals for teaching Max. We want children to be problem solvers and we want children to be critical thinkers. When we are teaching Max, we are not teaching children to be able to score good marks in their school exam. That is not our primary goal. That can happen as a subtle secondary objective, but it's not our primary objective. Our primary objective of teaching Max is to develop these two life skills of problem solving and critical thinking skills. We are very clear with the purpose of Max. At the end of the day, we don't want our children to be human calculators. We want our children to be real life problem solvers and real life critical thinkers, and we believe that's what our children need to be able to live in a 21st century. So we want our children to be logical thinkers, critical thinkers, and Max is a subject to teach, logic. So here is one of the famous quote of Bertrand Russell. The fact that all mathematics is symbolic logic is one of the greatest discoveries of our age. So Max is symbolic logic. Yeah. So we want our children to be logical, to be problem solvers, to be critical thinkers. So this is the purpose of teaching Max in AXF. We don't teach Max for children to score good marks. We don't teach Max for them to be human calculators. We teach Max for them to be able to solve real life problems. We teach Max for them to be able to critically think. So problem solving and critical thinking are crucial life skills for children in 21st century. Take an example. Most of the time, we teach Max to children the way we were taught in our schools. This is a classical example, right? Imagine this is the sum the child is supposed to do. Divide 8 by 2. So normally what we do is we ask the child to put a box like this, put 8 inside, 2 outside. We ask child to remember the tables, 2 4 times is 8, and put a line and minus it. This is the system we teach our children to divide. What a new research is saying is, this is a very traditional way of teaching mathematics. This traditional way is very harmful to teach division to children. When I say harmful, by default, it is ineffective also. So, first of all, this is just a strategy or a tool to do division. Division conceptually is very different, and we end up teaching only this system or a trick. We never tell children what is division. That's why it is very harmful. Children grow up thinking this is division. They'll be able to do it, but when they have to apply division in real life situation, they'll never be able to do it. Or they will learn it one day. If you ask them after 2 days, they would have forgotten it. So why this is harmful is, one, it is very ineffective. Two, it also creates some sort of fear in children. When we say max, even a lot of adults get scared of max. You know, when there is fear, learning is never going to happen. Then you can ask, oh, should we not teach this? You can teach this, but there is a step, there is a process for you to teach it. And that is also a method we encourage you as a math volunteer to teach maths for our children. This is the method we suggest you to follow to teach maths in AXF. The method is simple. It can be written in an acronym called CRA. C stands for concrete, R stands for representative, and A stands for abstract. The division sum we saw as an example here is actually an abstract sum. We directly enter into abstract teaching of mathematics. But the best way to teach maths, or a scientific way to teach maths, is to start with concrete first. What is concrete? Concrete means children should handle concrete learning materials. You don't need fancy items from market. You can use materials which are readily available in nature. Stones, sticks, leaves, marbles, dal. Those are concrete. To teach division, you can use stones. They have to use concrete materials for them to be able to use their hands and do it. Yeah, so that is concrete, using concrete materials to teach a concept. After that, it is representative. Representative means using pictorial forms to teach a concept. Especially in AXF, the workbooks has a lot of picture sums for children to be able to understand the concept. After you teach the representative format of a sum, then come to abstract format. Only if you are coming from concrete, representative and abstract will the children be able to understand the concept. Otherwise, they will remember a lot of things they will never be able to apply in real life situation. So, this is the most important part of teaching maths in AXF. If you are introducing any concept, if you are directly using a textbook and teaching, or if you are directly asking the child to do in pencil and paper, you are doing something wrong. First, make children do it in real life situation. First concrete, then come to representative, and then come to abstract. So for your question, should we not teach this? You can teach this, but before teaching this, you should have done concrete, representative, and then you should come to abstract. So this is one major point I want to communicate. Use CRA method to teach maths in AXF. The second major difference in teaching maths in AXF is we follow something called objective oriented teaching. Normally teachers have this tendency to take a textbook, teach one sum in the textbook, ask children to do the other sums in the same format and complete the textbook. We are not here to complete syllabus or textbook. We are as AXF curriculum team, we are also very clear. We don't care about how much syllabus you are completing. What we care about is how much the child is able to do, how much the child is learning. So this is the difference between syllabus oriented teaching or teaching for syllabus completion and objective oriented teaching. In objective oriented teaching, we'll use this acronym. This is the most important thing you need to know and remember and understand to be able to teach maths effectively this year in AXF. SWBAT. SWBAT means student will be able to. So all the concept in maths are broken down into small objectives. So each objective will be denoted by SWBAT. So for example, SWBAT add 2-digit numbers. That means student will be able to add 2-digit numbers. in AXF, the curriculum is broken down into small objectives, and an objective means what the child is able to do at the end of that 1 hour you are teaching. Yeah, what the child is able to do at the end of the year. So we have a lot of objectives for different levels. So in AXF, while you're teaching, you will have two resources to you. Yeah, one is the student book, the other one is the teacher book. So in Max, we have different levels of teaching. So the starting level is pre-A level, and then we have A level, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So most of our children come between A to E level. So A level is first standard content, B level is second standard, like that it goes on till E level. E level comes around 5th standard content. Pre-A level is KG content. So once you once you start teaching in AXF, first your center head will assign you a level, and once you are assigned with a level, you will get two resources. One resource is a student book. This student book, all children will have it. In the beginning of the year, we take a baseline assessment, and all children will have a student book. And the second resource you will get is something called a teacher book. The teacher book will look something like this picture here. So the first column is chapter number. These are the components of a teacher book. Chapter number. This chapter can be found in the student book. The second column is the page number. Again, it can be found in the student book. The third column is the chapter name. The chapter name given in the student book. Fourth column is the most important column you need to understand. In a student book, there will be a lot of sums, and a chapter will have different types of sums. But in teacher book, each type of sum is defined as separate objective. So when you're teaching, you will not go by page in student book, but you will go as one objective in a time. Yeah. So here is your objective column, and here is your questions column. So at the end of that objective, for example, student will be able to identify things based on size. The question is, take the taller girl. This is the type of question we want our children to be able to answer at the end of the class. And the last column is vocabulary. I'll explain you the importance of this vocabulary when I'm dealing with the language concern. So in AXF, usage of teacher book is the most crucial thing. We don't teach for completing the syllabus. We teach for the child to be able to do certain objectives. So there are some rules in doing the objectives. By rule, only one objective at a time. Okay? So maximum there can be 2 objectives, but don't go more than 2 objectives at a time. So one objective at a time means you will, in a page there can be 2 different sums, but you will not be doing 2 different sums on one day. You will do one objective. One objective mostly means one type of sum. So the major understanding you need to have is, in AXF we don't teach syllabus, we teach objectives, and the common rule is one objective, one day. The next point is, in AXF we teach Maths in English. Most of our children come from vernacular medium schools, but we still teach Maths in English, and there is a reason for doing that. Once our children complete 10th standard, their SSC board exam, when they go to college, all their exams and everything is in English. For the child to be able to do well in the future, he or she cannot escape English. When a child enters college, and the child who is studying in vernacular medium enters college, and when everything is in English, they undergo a lot of mental stress. They can be smart children, but just because they are not able to read and understand English, they go through a lot of inferiority complex and emotional stress. That is the reason, to avoid that, to support children, we teach maths in English. And there are some things we can do to children to increase their comprehension skills in maths. So what we have observed is, most of our children understand mathematical concept, but when it comes to test, they are not able to do. So one myth we have is, they are not able to do because of English. That is true. Yes, they are not able to read and understand English, but it is also true, even if you give the same test paper in Hindi or Marathi, they are not able to do the test. So the problem is basic comprehension and those examination skills. So we have to develop this comprehension and examination skills in them on a daily basis. So there are 3 solutions to it. One, in our teacher book, we have given a list of vocabulary. So this is the teacher book. On the last column, you have lot of vocabulary words, and it is mapped to each objective. For each objective, there is a series of vocabulary words. One rule with vocabulary is, vocabulary never develops in one day. It is a continuous process. So from day 1 you start teaching, you give a vocabulary list to children which is already there with you, and make children practice reading this word. Before you teach a concept, a child should be able to read a vocabulary word. So for example, in A level, there is a word called thick. From day 1, practice this word with the child. When I say practice, we don't expect the child to be able to tell the meaning or the spelling or anything. The child should be just able to read the word tick. Meaning comes later. You can give the meaning when you're teaching the objective, but before you teach the objective, the child should, when you're teaching size, the child should be able to read bigger. How can you do it? Is every first 5 or 10 minutes in your class, practice this vocabulary words. In a week you can fix, all my children should be able to read 5 or 10 vocabulary words, and continuously practice these vocabulary words. You can use flashcards to practice these words. You can use a lot of games to learn these words, but make sure they are able to just read these words. When you are teaching the objective, you can tell the meaning, you can ask them to write the spelling. Meaning and spelling comes later, but first step, they should be able to just read the word. So practice vocabulary word. This is not connected to maths concept teaching, but it is a prerequisite to teaching maths. Yeah? First, practice vocabulary words. Second, consciously develop the skill of identifying keywords in a question. For example, there can be a question, arrange numbers in ascending order. Most of our children know what ascending order is, but when it comes as a question, they are not able to answer that question because they don't know what that question means. If the volunteer tells the child arrange in ascending order, then the child is able to arrange. But that's not what we expect the child to do. We expect the child to be able to do things individually, independently. In our baseline or end line, we never support a child because our expectation is for the child to be able to do the sums independently. So if the child is not able to do a simple problem independently, how can we, build in problem solving and critical thinking skills? Yeah. So the second major thing you have to do to develop the language is consciously build in the skill of identifying keyword in a question. I gave you an example of ascending order, like arrange numbers in ascending order. In this question, if they are just able to understand what ascending order is, if they are able to know what that ascending order is, they have got the concept. They can easily do the sum. So, in a question like this, help them circle keywords like ascending order, bigger or smaller. It should come from day one. And the third important part is, please talk to children in English. Unless you talk to children in English, they will never understand English. So when we say talk to children in English, we are not saying talk completely in English. Children don't understand English if they are in lower levels of English. But we have a suggestion for you: talk 70% in English and 30% in local language. Where you have to use local language, please feel free to use local language. But in a normal conversation, please use English. You can talk in English, translate the same word in the local language. That is perfectly fine. But do not talk completely in the local language. Children struggle. It is not justifiable to talk only in the local language when we want children to be able to do sums in English or learn English, right? We want our children to be able to be good communicators also. So please talk to them in English. So this is how we deal with the language problem. The next thing is, most of our volunteers are new to teaching, right? There is a process for teaching. So normally in our schools, when we were studying, the teacher used to come, take a textbook, teach, and then go. We will give an exam. We will, write the exam. Based on the exam, they will give us pass or fail. But teaching is not just coming to the class and teaching children what we know. Teaching is like a nursing process, like a process that the doctor does. The first thing a teacher does is assessment. Understand what your children know and what your children don't know. Like a doctor, when you get sick, when you go to a doctor, the doctor will try to understand what is the actual problem, right? The first step in teaching is also assessment. The best way to know your child is to look at the child's baseline paper or the endline paper. So in AXF we have 3 assessments. One is baseline, midline and endline. Baseline is the beginning of the year test and endline is the end of the year test. In the month of December we have midline. So the first step is to understand what the children know and what they don't know. The first step is to assess children. The second step is to plan based on the information you have. In the assessment, you will know what children know and what children don't know. After that is the planning process. Planning process is the most important process in teaching. If you have to be a good teacher, you have to plan your lessons. There is no other shortcut. You are spending 1 hour in a class. You need to spend 1 hour in a class, you need to spend at least half an hour to 20 minutes to plan your lessons. So what planning means? Before you enter the class, you need to be certain about the objectives. You need to be very clear at the end of that 1 hour what my children should be able to do. And there is also a formula to effectively teach in this 1 hour. I'll share it later. But the teaching learning process is, the first step is assess, second step is plan, the third step is implementation. Most of us think implementation and evaluation is only teaching. No. Teaching starts from assessment, planning and then implementation. Implementation is just one part of teaching. So in AXF, the implementation is for 1 hour. So we teach 1 hour, 1 class. So this is your implementation part. After you implement a lesson, then you evaluate your lesson. So evaluation process can be in form of test, can be in form of quiz, can be in form of various other activities. But in AXF, we have our midline and our end line to evaluate student learning. When we are evaluating what the children have learnt, and we are not evaluating the volunteers' effectiveness. We are very clear about the varied background of our volunteers. We don't expect them to be professional teachers, but we expect students learning, and we expect volunteers to travel in the direction of student learning and not in syllabus completion. That's our major purpose. What positive life changes are we able to bring in student learning? So this is the teaching learning process: assess, plan, implement, and evaluate. So for a class to be effective, as I said before, you have to plan. So there are some easy steps for you to plan a lesson. So for a 1 hour class, you should plan at least for half an hour. So before coming to class, 1, decide what objective you are going to teach in that 1 hour. And for deciding this objective, you should decide, do my children already know this objective or not? If you are going to teach addition, and if your children already know addition, there is no sense of teaching addition to children. So you need to understand before choosing an objective, does your majority of children know that objective already or not? If children already know the objective, please do not teach that objective, move on to the next objective. So in your home, when you are planning for lesson, first fix the objective. Next, this is the formula we suggest you to use to be able to teach maths effectively in that 1 hour. So the formula goes like this: I do, we do, and you do. I do is completely introduction of new material, and I do is the teacher's work. Some teachers in 1 hour they tend to speak for 30 to 40 minutes. Children do not listen to us for 30-40 minutes. Children attention span is very low. Even adult attention span is not for 1 hour. So whatever you have to teach to children, whatever material, whatever information you have to give to children, please do in I do. The I do can maximum be for 10 to 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, please stop talking, right? Please stop talking in sense, please stop teaching in front of the class. In 15 minutes, plan your lesson. You can teach, you can tell them why you should learn this objective. You can tell them how they should be doing it. You can tell them the real life application to it. Everything you can do in the first 10 to 15 minutes. You can revise the previous content the first 10 minutes. That is I do. The second part is we do. We do is the most important part in teaching maths. In we do, you can do group activity, you can do individual practice, you can basically in we do what you are going to do is you are making sure all children are able to do the sum you have taught them in I do. Okay, we do is a time for practice, we do is a time for group activity. So in we do you can also spend time with children who are struggling and teach them again if they have not understood a concept. So we do is for group activity and practice. The last part is you do. You do means the child should be able to do what you have taught them in I do and what you have practiced in we do independently. So this is a form of a test. Last 5 or 10 minutes of your lesson can be a small test. You don't have to
bring printouts for it. It can be in your notebook, it can be in the child's notebook, you can write on the board, it can be a small bit paper test. But at the end of 1 hour, last 5 or 10 minutes, please test children and see if they are able to independently do what you have taught them. In here I'm consciously emphasizing on the word independently. When we say a child is able to do something, the child should be able to do it independently, not without any support. So once you finish your I do, we do and you do, at the end of every class, you will know how many children have actually mastered the objective. Suppose if you are teaching an objective today, student will be able to arrange numbers in ascending order. If that is the objective you are teaching, you have done your I do, you have done your we do, and you have done your you do. At the end of the class, you are realizing around 80% of your children have not mastered the objective. The next day, you will not move on to the next objective because majority of your class has not got the concept you have taught. You will reteach the objective. Why you will reteach the objective is, when majority of the class has not understood the concept, it is not the student's problem. There is a problem with the strategy the teacher is using. It is a teacher problem. You have to ask yourself honest question like, is my teaching method wrong or the students have not understood? If majority of the students have not understood, that means the teacher's teaching method is wrong. Another case scenario can be majority of students have understood it, say around 80% of the students have understood, or 90% of the students have understood. Only 10 or 20% of children have not understood. Then you can freely move to the next objective. That is the second rule for using objectives. First rule is 1 objective in a day, maximum 2 objectives. Second rule is, when you teach objective, you can move on to the next objective only when 80% of your children have mastered the objective. If 80% of the children have not mastered a particular objective, that means you have to change your strategy. In the second scenario, where 80% of children have mastered the objectives, 20% have not mastered, in that case move on to the next objective, and in the we do part, help children who have not mastered that particular objective. And always be conscious, there will always be some children who need special attention. In a country like India, where 43% of our children are malnourished, in any population, 5% of children need special attention, special education. Let's be very clear with our limitations. We are not special educators. If you come across some children who need some special education, the best thing you can do is to tell your center head, talk to the parents, and do not judge a child before. We can't judge a child if the child has a special need or not. Only a trained psychologist can do it. So the maximum you can do is to encourage the parents to take the child and get the child tested and identify the real problem. So the best thing you can do as a teacher on a daily basis is include those children in all the activities. Being inclusive is the best thing we can do to children who have special needs. So do not push them. They will learn in their own pace, respect their space, and give them their space. That's the best thing we can do. But the majority of our you will decide your objective based on the majority phase. So do not do less objectives because 1 or 2 children are struggling. Do not rush through your objectives because 1 or 2 children are able to do it very fast. You should always go with the majority of your class. So with this, I am ending this video. If you have any doubt, you can ask your center head, center mentor, Your center mentor will be able to provide you with a student book and a teacher book. Please use the student book and the teacher book to teach maths in an effective way. Please do not teach for marks, teach for conceptual understanding of children. And remember, our purpose of teaching maths in AXF is to build problem solving and critical thinking skills, not to make our children human calculators. Thank you so much.